Good morning with Ari Sussman, CEO of Collective Mining. I called it Continental Gold last week. Just completely slipped my mind. I don't know how I did that, but the symbol is the same, CNL. Ari, great news this morning.
Yeah, it's the gift that keeps on giving at the Guayabales Project and last week at the San Antonio Project. I mean, we have an amazing land package as the drill results are corroborating with what I'm saying.
Yeah, okay. I definitely want to get into the last two news releases, but first I want to ask you about sort of the share price and the roller coaster of being a chairman, a CEO, a large shareholder in this sector. I mean, obviously the CNL share price has done well over the last few years. There's no question about that. You guys have had a tremendous run to $1 billion+ market cap, an investment or multiple investments by one of the largest gold mining companies in the world. There's been a lot of good news for the company. But even when a company is doing well and making new discoveries, sometimes the share price doesn't always go up. And you kind of went through a consolidation, including a bit of a downdraft during the summer. Does that affect you? Does it bother you? Does it make you do anything in a different way? Or are you just kind of numb to it and you expect it to happen?
I wish I could say it bothered me, but it actually doesn't, because, you know, I've been around since the early 1990s investing or running mining companies. So it's a long enough career to have seen this before. And, you know, this is cyclical business. You know, we all came out of quite a long bear market only recently. I mean, you know, I think the juniors, I mentioned this to you before. I mean, depending on which junior, they kind of bottomed somewhere between the spring and the summer of 2024. I'm talking about pre-producers. The producers, you know, in gold anyways, bottomed in the late 2022. So we're really early, right? And the volatility is immense, but the trend is up. And so no, it doesn't bother me. And I'll come back to a point that I made to someone yesterday that I was speaking with. You know, we sold Continental Gold for approximately 2 billion Canadian dollars. The gold price was, I believe, around $1,475 when we sold it. Okay, so we're now at $3,500 gold, over 3,500 today, I believe. The margins of those that produce it are the widest I believe they've been, at least in my career. I've never seen them this wide. And so when you look at the cash flow that they're spitting out, and more importantly, look at what acquisition costs would be for those companies of juniors like ourselves. You know, the paradigm, the $2 billion is, I think, clearly in the 3 to 7 or $3 to 6 billion range now, because it's a small percentage of the market caps and the free cash flow they're generating. So, you know, things are up across the board. We're just coming out of it, but I think there's a lot more room to run here. You know, the gold price hasn't really moved that much yet from its bottom in a historical context when you look at prior moves.
Yeah, I mean, and that's important to think about that in terms of the multiples of the gold price. I mean, the $3,500 number is obviously very impressive, especially for guys like us who are over 40 years old, who recall when it was $275 an ounce 25 years ago. But it's only a double from 2022. It's only a double. I mean, only double's pretty good in three years, but it's only a double. Think about some of the other asset classes and stocks out there and what they've done in the last, 2 or 3 years. Okay, so CNL, tremendous August, incredible move, breakout to new highs, and it's not, without reason. Obviously, gold is breaking out, but you guys are making new discoveries, and this is very impressive. So let's talk about San Antonio. This is something we talked about previously a couple times. You kind of hedged a bit in the last couple conversations, saying, we'll see, we're taking a shot at this, it's a gamble. Well, it looks like you've got confirmation that you got something here.
So, yes. Okay, look, it's a big, giant system. I mean, I just walked the project for the first time since we acquired it in 2020. I had walked part of it then, but only a specific part. Now I traped 2 weeks ago or so, or a week and a half ago, for about 8 hours. Okay, walked from the bottom of a mountain all the way to the top and all along the top and back down. So I saw the entire project. I will say this, and this doesn't mean that it's going to turn into a mine, but I haven't seen an alteration zone this intense and this widespread before. It's in the press release, we talked about 3 by 3 kilometers. That's simply because that's all the area that we've been managed to map and check the alteration. It's clearly going to go bigger than that. We have very little outcrop. So this is the challenge. It's the same as the Guayabales project, right? You're limited on outcrop, but you take a hammer, you go to tracks. The tracks are typically created by the drilling company so that they can move into rigs. And so there's a wall, it's a steep slope, and you tap the wall and bang, you break off the rock, and it is blitzed white. And I think it's a pyrite halo from a porphyry. It's running, kind of 0.2 to 0.5 grams per ton everywhere. So that's your surrounding ground. And then within it, we've discovered 2 things, right? We've discovered, obviously, the big potential nut is the porphyry, which is more gold rich than copper, but it is a copper gold porphyry system. Unusually high ratio of gold to copper, something like 3 to 4 to 1 so far. That's encouraging. And then we have the late stage, we call them CBM veins, or carbonate base metal veins. These are late forming porphyry veins. So as the intrusion that creates the porphyry cools, the last bit of juice it spits off are these veins, and we're finding them sitting at the contact of the porphyry mineralization. So they're connected, right? So it's not like we have a vein system on the left and then a few hundred meters away on the right there's the porphyry. They come together. We put out these results. And I think it's fair when I hedge my bet, because we are poking kind of blind in the dark here. We put out, I think it was 6 holes, if I recall. Right? They weren't all good. I mean, the 15 and 18 were the big ones, in the release. But we're vectoring, and this is what exploration for porphyries are. I know you invested in porphyry companies exploring for porphyries, and they're always kind of the same story. They take a while to find, and then once you find them, you smack your head and say, why didn't I think of it? And they're actually quite easy to drill, right? So we're still in the trying to determine the geometry, but we've got 550 meters or over half a kilometer of strike, totally open, right? But in a corridor, and we're vectoring in, and let's see what the next holes that are just going down, just starting now, find. We got those results. We reoriented the rigs based on the results, and I'm optimistic that we're going to find something really special here with a few more holes.
Okay, so the focus, to be clear, is now the pound target. That's where you've had some joy, and you're getting closer to the heat source there, it appears. Is that correct?
I think so. But let me say this: we have really 3 targets. Pound, cop, and euro. Right? I walked them all. They might all be one. It's not like the alteration changes as you move from one area to the other. Really, the separating feature is the topography more than anything else. So I don't know if they're going to be one, but we're moving our way southward. So pound is in the north. Clearly the trend of the porphyry is to I think the southeast. That's where it looks like we were vectoring. So the rigs are moving in that direction, and I'm optimistic by what we'll find. I think we need to miss a few more times still to determine exactly where it is, but that's the nature of exploration. Misses sometimes are better than hits, because they tell you where they close off areas so that you know where to focus, and we're really getting close. I'm excited. I think we have huge potential here, and I look forward to the next kind of 5 or 8 holes that come out of here, because I think that's what we need to really pin this thing down.
Okay, so you have 3 rigs now at San Antonio?
We went to 3 rigs. The third rig hasn't started turning, but it will start, I think tonight. So we'll have 3 rigs as of tonight, turning, and I'm excited by this thing. It is a big giant system, and when you have 3 styles generating metal, together, that's a good sign. And again, the CBM veins, this is a feature of Colombia, it seems, right? I mean, it's quite amazing. We're not seeing this too many other places interlope with porphyries.
So when this news release came out, at the end of August. I read it and I was super jazzed. I was like, oh man, they're really getting close. Now I can tell the gold grades are kicking up. You've got some nice sniffs of moly, so it tells me we're getting closer maybe to a center there. But I shared it with a group of investors, and a couple of them said, well, aren't these drill holes too deep to be economic at these grades? Don't they need 3 or 4 grams over 200 meters to be economic at this depth? And I thought about it. I said, well, first of all, this is exploration. They're getting closer. They're not saying that they're in the heart of it yet. But also, I think if you got enough of 1 to 2 gram gold equivalent, it could certainly be economic. I mean, even if it is fairly deep. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I'll answer that in a few ways. So let me switch gears briefly and go to the Guayabales Project and Apollo. Okay, so when we discovered Apollo, it took us about 1 year to figure out where it outcropped its surface. Keep in mind, we do not have outcrop on either of these projects, San Antonio or Guayabales, almost none. So you have to drill and vector to find where it comes to surface. I have no idea if this system comes to surface at San Antonio or not, but to assume it's deep, on a couple of holes doesn't make sense yet. Okay, maybe it is. Now, let me address your question on economics. So obviously every project's different from the next one, but we have topography in our favor, not quite as much vertical as Guayabales, but some. So you would definitely, if it's an underground mine, you would tunnel from a lower elevation, which would get you much closer to the top of the system than us drilling from the top of a mountain, because that's where we have the flat topography to put rigs, right? So we get much closer to it. Secondly, if again, with the caveat, I'll repeat again, not all deposits are the same. But if you look at how typically porphyries are mined underground, most of them are by some form of block caving. If that is, we have a deposit and it can be mined by block cave, those kind of cutoff grades underground now are around 0.35 to 0.4 of a gram. Okay, for a block cave. It's almost the same as an open pit. Not quite as good yet, but it's on its way as the technology advances. So it's a funny thing with gold, because I heard the same comments you had, but if we reported copper equivalent and said we drilled, a couple hundred meters almost at north of 1%, everyone would say, oh, that's perfect for underground mining, right? I mean, so we got to get our heads around mining cost curves, right? The more bulky, the lower the cutoff grade. So your bulkiest method is block caving. Then you go to sub-level caving. And in gold deposit, again, they're not all the same, but you can kind of say 0.5 to 0.7 grams per ton as an underground cutoff grade. Then you go to, sub-level open stoping, 0.6 to 0.8. And then as you get more selective, costs go up.
Okay. And that I learned something there about the block caving. That's a very important point, because a lot of people are like, how can 1% copper be economic at 1,000 meters deep? Well, you just answered it. It absolutely can. If you've got a big enough ore body and it checks all the other boxes, it can be highly economic at 1,000 meters deep.
Absolutely correct. And let me add one thing on the drilling. The rigs we had didn't have the right capacity. So now we have 3 rigs with stronger capacity. And so we lost hole 15 and 18 in strong mineralization. Hole 20, which we don't have assays for yet, we visually was lost due to lack of power in mineralization. So we've upgraded the rigs, and we should be able to cut this stuff like butter and move quicker, at least in terms of drilling.
So is that what the rigs are doing now? Are they following up on those holes that you couldn't get deeper in?
No. That doesn't, because we didn't leave the holes open thinking we're going to re-enter them. When you get stuck, it's typically complicated to leave a hole open, because the rods start to move or get lost. So you close it up. You just do new holes. We're just expanding. We're learning. I mean, who knew what we needed in terms of rig capacity? We took kind of standard rigs that we use and put them there, and we need more kind of types. These aren't big rigs like we're doing at Apollo, at Guayabales Project for Ramp Zone. This is not like these very deep rigs, or like this company Atex, is used. It's not like that. These are just rigs that can do, kind of a vertical kilometer or 1.2 kilometers. They're pretty standard. We just had weaker capacity ones prior to now. Now we have got a full suite of good rigs.
Okay. And I know we've gone over this previously, but San Antonio is a porphyry system. Can you explain to the viewers why this porphyry is so gold rich and doesn't have as much copper?
Well, that's a good question. And I really can't give a good answer yet, because that could change very quickly, right, as we explore and drill. So we don't know that. But what is interesting about it is that, when you look at porphyries, it doesn't matter which one, they pretty much tell you relatively quickly what your gold copper ratio, and they move in tandem generally. So as your copper grade goes up, your gold grade goes up at some roughly similar percentage, and vice versa. So at this high ratio, of 3 to 4 to 1, it looks like it's somewhere in there. If we find a sweet spot in the system where the copper grades are only 0.4 to 0.5%, and this ratio holds, we're going to be looking at accompanying gold grades of between 1.5 and 2 grams per ton. So combined, it's going to be very high if this ratio holds. The reason that sometimes copper is lower in porphyries has to do with the level of oxygen that's been pumped through the porphyry system. As you reduce the oxygen, right, you tend to get less base metals, and it can get all the way to fully reduced systems. They call them reduced intrusion related systems. You know this from Apollo, the deep part ramp zone, Marmotto Deeps, and everyone knows snowline gold, right? So what does that mean? Reduced intrusion related system. That's a porphyry that's had no oxygen put into it, so it's reduced, and only the precious metal component precipitated up. So the many reasons why we see higher gold. It could be higher copper somewhere else. We'll find out. I don't think it's going to be from the soil geochemistry that we have, but I honestly don't know that. Let's keep exploring.
Okay, so the drilling is ongoing at San Antonio. 3 rigs hard at work there, and assay spending for a bunch of holes there. So today you announced a new silver vein discovery at the X target. We talked about this, I think, way back in like June or something. You said, hey, we're going to try to make a new discovery there at X. I like the target, and lo and behold, we have a new discovery. So tell us about this new discovery at X.
Well, let me back up. I believe we talked about it. If I didn't, either way, it was in a press release, so anyone can go look it up. We found that we did a gravity survey, geophysical survey, over about a 2 by 2 kilometer area of the Guayabales Project, right? And we did this predicated on the fact that we already know Apollo is a discovery, a major discovery, and we did gravity on top of Apollo, and it lit up like a gravity high like crazy. No surprising, it has a high specific gravity because it's a breccia system, it's porous, there's a lot of sulfide in it. So we said, hey, maybe this technique could help us find other breccia bodies or high sulfide content type systems. And we put out a press release and said, we have with an image, here's a series of gravity highs, okay? And very clearly we said, we believe they can be one of 3 things, okay? In the best case scenario, we discover another Apollo-like breccia. That's one. The second one, which is more of a long shot, but is possible, if we were to find a porphyry, and that porphyry was very high in magnetite, it would light up. Without the magnetite, you could have a big copper gold porphyry with low magnetite. It wouldn't show in gravity. Okay, that's the second one. And then the third one, the most common we believe we find, is an ultramafic bearing schist rock unit. Okay, and why I say most common, because the country rock at the Guayabales Project is schist. Okay, that's the basement rock. Okay, so we knew it was going to be one of 3 things. We drilled an X, so we drilled 2 holes. One, we had this really good soil anomaly, which was not towards the gravity high. We drilled that hole first, okay, and that was the better of the 2 holes that we announced today, right, including almost 13 meters at north of 500 grams silver. And then we drilled the second hole right into the dead center of this gravity high. Okay, the gravity high is a schist unit. It's an ultramafic schist at X. Okay, so initially we thought that was negative. Where am I going with this? It's actually in a way positive, because a schist, body is very non-porous. Okay, so it acts like a brick wall. Okay, and if we take a glass of water, in the case the water this time is a vein system with metal in it, and we push it up against a brick wall or a schist body, it only has one place, two directions to go, up and down. Okay, because it can't penetrate through or much of it. And we think that is exactly what we have found at X. So the contact of the schist with another rock, in this case it's a diorite, right, is the conduit with which this vein system has come up, and it's a silver-rich vein system. Look, we only have 2 holes. We cut veins in both, okay? I like it a lot because there are lots of veins. Okay, when you find a vein system, it's not really that good when you find one vein. Okay, this is a multi-tier vein system. The holes were in directions like this, one to the northwest, one kind of northeast. They covered an area with only 2 holes at shallow angles of about 500 meters by 500 meters and maybe about 300 meters vertical. Okay, and so in 2 holes, we have a big area with mineralization in it. What are the chances that we found the best part in the first 2 holes? Almost zero. I mean, when I've drilled anything in the past, this is how you start a discovery typically, and then you vector and it gets better. So I like this. I think we have good potential. We saw some funky silver minerals who's in the drill core, whose names I don't even recall. I'd never seen them before. My team knew what they were. I was all excited by that, and here we are. So these are silver dominant with gold and some lead and zinc. These are CBM veins. They're porphyry-related veins. If they're vertically formed from a porphyry, they should go down a long way. So there could be over 1,000 meters vertical here if we get lucky, maybe more. And let's go and drill this thing. So we just got these results. We put them out. The team's going to review everything this week, and soon enough we'll be in some press release announcing our plans to follow up at X. But that could be a good one because there's a lot of veining in it, right? I mean, it's a lot of veining, and we've only scratched the surface. Last thing I will say about it, if the soil geochemistry is predictive of what's below, the best part of the anomaly we haven't even tested yet. I mean, it's to the north of where we drilled. So I don't know if that means anything. Obviously, maybe it means nothing. Who knows? But this is exciting. It's a brand new discovery, and let's see if we can eventually build this thing into something that might be mineable one day.
So at the start of this year's drill program, you said our goal is to make a new discovery. It seems like you're on your way. Would you say do you have confirmation that we've achieved our goal, or do you need more confirmation from some of these targets?
So look, San Antonio, it's a discovery. Is it a discovery that will turn into a deposit that needs more holes? It's very early days. X is greenfield, first 2 holes ever put into an area, right? This is all the information we have. So it's hard to say, hey, we have a world-class discovery in the making from 2 holes, but this is very rare, as you know, in mining. It's unusual to put 2 first holes into any area and come up with these kind of hits. Okay, so I'm encouraged, and given the tenor of the project sitting next to Marmato, right? I mean, maybe X is 1.25 or 1 mile at most away from Marmato. I mean, it's unbelievable, and I think there's a lot more juice to find there. Let's go. And the funny thing is I said we set out to make a new discovery, so we had up to 2 floating rigs at the Guayabales Project, plus the 3 now at San Antonio, testing new things. So we've tested Plutus North. I have no idea what we've hit there. I'm not saying it's a discovery because I don't know, but that's another gravity anomaly. What if that hits, right? I mean, so then it'll become, what do we do, right? I mean, we're generating a project with a major discovery at Apollo and all kinds of potential around it, and this is how you get to large valuations and how you become attractive to bigger players in the space. because you want to create vision of something that can grow for a long period of time, and you want to create a project that someone, if it's not yourself, can envision mining for multi-decades, and that's really what we're trying to do.
Let's talk about the ramp zone. So this is the really high grade zone located at the bottom of Apollo. In today's news release, you say you've got 2 big, deep rigs that are going to test ramp. So what's happening at ramp?
Okay, so ramp, you recall, or your viewers might recall, we reached the depth capacity of the rigs we had at Apollo. Right, so we ran out of juice. Same kind of thing again, right? But deeper. We had fairly big rigs, and so we had to get larger rigs. Okay, so how do we drill? How do we drill ramp? We drill mother holes. So we're doing directional drilling. So you drill these long and frankly boring, mother holes, because they're not drilled inside the deposit. They're drilled way outside, and then you direct or deflect holes from the end of that long mother hole. What is the status of these 2 rigs? So one of the rigs has completed of its mother hole has completed about 650 meters, and it has maybe 100 to 150 meters more to go before we start deflecting. And the second rig only started drilling last week, so it's not very far. It's maybe a couple hundred meters of 800 meters depth requirement. So soon we're going to be drilling into ramp. That means that we will be looking to Q4 for assay results from that. I have one potentially exciting caveat to bring up. Okay. So when we got the first big rig on site, when an earlier hole to try and get to ramp failed, we left it open. Okay, in the hopes that it would not collapse over a period of 3 or 4 or 5 months, right? And guess what? It didn't. So we're able to put the big rig down that hole very quickly, and we continued it. It was only needed to drill another kind of 150 meters. We completed that hole. Okay. I don't know what we've hit, but I can tell you that if it hits, it had a lot of sulfide in it visually. It'd be something like a 200-meter step out along strike to the east. So in an area we have no drilling. Like we should have those assays kind of mid this month, maybe the 3rd week, of September, if the lab holds true to its word. So let's see what we get there, but that could be, some interest in the short term. Then we wait for a series of holes into, the November, December timeframe from ramp, and we're going to be blitzing ramp indefinitely going forward now.
That's exciting, yeah, because we kind of took a break from ramp for a couple months there, but now you're back at it. So you were just down in Caldas just recently. You got 11 rigs going, this monster drill program in progress. What's the mood at site? How many employees and contractors do you guys have down there at site right now?
I think it was all in. We were probably something in the 180 person range.
Wow, that's
right?
a lot. That's a lot for a junior.
Well, it's we're 130 some odd employees for the company, and then you have contractors from drilling. Remember, 11 rigs requires quite a lot of people, right? Because they drill in shifts, right? So, and then we have some sustainability contractors and other contractors, helping us, environmental contractors, etc. So it's big. It's not that big. It's kind of, remember that in Colombia, cost of labor is far cheaper than it is in North America. So you tend to have more people than you would here, and the efficiency can go up if you manage that well. So I don't think we need to really grow other than a few little pieces here and there. So much in the next couple of years. I mean, maybe that number will go up by 20 total, something like that, but not much more than that until we're ready to make a decision on a mine.
Is the plan to maintain that number of rigs and people at site through the end of the year? I mean, until the holidays, I guess, or will you take a couple off at some point?
No, I mean, okay, the program floats between 9 and 11 rigs, right? So we're at 11, maybe I think we go to 10 kind of in November as we start to ramp down for the holidays. But yeah, basically we're maintaining that level. I don't have a budget or a plan in place for next year. Our team's in the process of building that out, but I can assure you, subject to financing, which we have lots of money, but subject to the market, etc. We'll do at least the same program, 11 rigs at up to 70,000 meters, hopefully more.
Okay, and I guess final question, and maybe a tricky one, but you're good at handling the tricky question. So obviously, as long as you're making new discoveries, finding more gold, silver, copper, tungsten, just keep drilling, right? But at some point, you got to wrap some economics around the project, right? So what are your thoughts on that and the timing of that?
So Apollo, I'll be broad. Apollo will go to a 43101 compliant mineral resource estimate sometime in H2 of next year. So sometime in the second half of 2026. Okay, once we budget and finish our planning to do that budget, we'll be able to be a little more direct on kind of narrowing it down to a couple of months. What does that mean? I mean, why can't I be more direct? Because right now internally, we're doing an estimate, okay? It's a mineral inventory estimate. We will not qualify for 43101, irrespective of the fact it's not independent, but we do this so it shows us where the drilling into Apollo needs to go so that we can get it to a 43101 compliant estimate. So that's the process, that we're doing right now, and that's going to drive the budget, and that's going to drive the timing of the estimate, because it depends how many meters we need to do and how fast or slow it takes to get there. So the goal is a mineral resource estimate sometime in the second half of next year, no question. And our thinking, at least right now, is from there go straight into a pre-feasibility study, skip the PEA step altogether.
I think that's a good move. Skip the PEA, go right to PFS.
I think they're a waste of money and time, right? Because they're not based on a lot of actual data. They're based on comps from other projects. And I always have said about PEAs, the independent engineering firms that companies hire, they don't say it outright, but they kind of imply, like, what number do you want us to get to, and work backwards from there instead of being based on real work. And they're not trustworthy, right? I mean, I've talked a lot about this in the past with people. When I see PEAs, I always say one thing. There is one gold standard PEA that I've seen that I know about in the last kind of 5 years, and that was Kinross on the Great Bear asset. Okay, so I say to anyone, take that PEA, which is a project in the heart of Red Lake with power, labor, roads, and skilled everything right there, parts, you name it, and now benchmark it against PEA of company ABC and explain to me how ABC's is accurate. They're not, right? They're way under, always way under on CapEx and usually crazy on the OpEx too. So I think the problem is that most people know what I'm saying is true. So they come out and everyone kind of looks at them and says, I don't trust it, next, it's irrelevant. Or if it comes out honestly, it scares investors because usually the companies aren't big enough as a company yet. And so the investors, how are they ever going to raise that money? Maybe they're dead in the water. So this is the problem. So I don't believe in them. I think there are ways to go to PFS. It's real. It's based on hard data that you've generated on your project, not benchmarked across some industry projects.
Those some really good points you just made there, including that PEAs, the CapEx is usually way under what it will actually be, especially in a PFS or a final feasibility study. Thank you, Ari. Great update here.
Thank you. Always good to catch up, and we'll talk soon.
Talk soon. Cheers.